Really wanted to like this figure, but it was frustrating the shock out of me. Hey everyone, David here. Welcome to another shocking Marvel Legends review. I'm sorry, but ever since I was even younger, there was just something about the fact that every cuss word is replaced with shock in the 2099 universe that has always bugged me. Unfortunately, it looks like that's not the only thing that's bugged me. It's also this Marvel Legends right here of Spider-Man 2099. Now, the funny thing is that despite that qualm with the cussing and the use of the word shock, I've actually warmed up to the actual interpretation of Spider-Man with the 2099 version played by Miguel O'Hara. So much so that I'm looking forward to his inclusion in the Across the Spider-Verse movie later on this year. That, along with just the version of the character, that interpretation, as well as playing him in certain video games like Shattered Dimensions, etc. I've warmed up to the guy. I really have. So it was only so disappointing. I was so distraught knowing that not only one, but two different versions of this Marvel Legends Spider-Man 2099 from the retro line have disappointed me with certain QA issues that should not be this prevalent, especially when I'm dealing with a second figure after having returned the first one. Yes, if you guys have been keeping up with some of my most recent videos, whether it be with McFarlane Batman figures or with the most recent Marvel Legends of the black and white Spider-Man, this was actually meant to go up a little earlier, but sadly it was due to a little mishap that I'll get into much more detail when we tackle articulation. As it stands with the overall design of this version of the Marvel Legends 2099 Spider-Man, he looks the part. He definitely looks like Spider-Man 2099 with the chrome blue and the red aesthetic there at the top. I've always really dug this edgy design, I really have. The character, it took me a while to warm up to as far as his version in contrast to Peter Parker's, but the actual aesthetical look of 2099 Spidey has always been awesome, except for the web. The web here on the back, the little cape web that he's got going on here on the back, I've never been a huge fan. So thankfully, Marvel Legends has the ability to remove that by just popping it out and removing it from a socket there on his back. So you can remove the webbing. I know it's a little early to tackle accessories, but I'll just tackle this one real fast since we're going to be getting out of the way here for the majority of the review. The webbing itself is just a translucent plastic with detailings of the web, and it looks the part. Definitely does the job of kind of interpreting that facet of the character, and you guys, some of you may like it. I know a lot of people have their preferences. Mine is that I could do without it. I like my 2099 Spidey to just have the overall suit and let it speak for itself. Apart from that, all the other little details I like as well. The only thing that it gets a little iffy on is that, much like the black and white negative zone Spidey, he's got that aesthetic to this mold of the figure that again makes me feel like I'm playing around with a figure that was meant for a different planogram, if you will, of a different character or a different Spidey, and they just kind of reprinted it to look like 2099 Spidey, especially since as we navigate here towards the middle of the torso, you can see a little bit more of that washboard ab kind of design to his abdomen. Very, very similar to that of that negative zone Spidey. So effectively, those two figures are pretty much the exact same, only with different reskins to cater to that version of Spidey. Not a huge fan of that, but I've always wanted to get at least for the past couple of years, since like I said, I've warmed up to the character, I've wanted a 2099 Spidey. So that resemblance to that negative zone Spidey is also coming through here with the legs, the feet. It's still got that duck foot design going on right there with the feet as well, and you can see more of that coming through here with the arms. Then it becomes a little different as we navigate here towards the forearms, where you do see a little bit of that Batman-like kind of design that 2099 Spidey has always had with these little hooks here on his gauntlets. You can see a little bit of that there, as well as the pointed hands that he's got right there. He's got the claws on his hands that resemble that of 2099 Spidey. So he's got that much more aggressive aesthetic, aggressive feel, and it looks very, very good as far as paint application, especially there on the head. I do feel like a little bit of the red on his head with the little indentations that's supposed to point out where his eyes are, they're a little lower than I would like for them to be. I feel like they have to be higher, I'm talking like 0.5 millimeter upwards as far as applying them to the head. personally, I feel. But outside of that, the head sculpt looks rather nice, and everything overall is very simple, but very true to character with that of 2099. Again, I just feel like a different body sculpt would have been warranted because Miguel O'Hara is traditionally a much bulkier, beefier guy, so having this much lankier kind of physique doesn't really favor the guy, but it does look like that was a choice made by Marvel Legends to make production a little easier, right? Well, maybe that's something that should have happened. Otherwise, we could have avoided some of these QA issues that I've had to deal with not just one, but two Spider-Man 2099 Marvel Legends. And that was coming through very well in the articulation. So, first and foremost, it's mostly, being that this is the exact same body as that of Negative Zone Spidey, he's going to have the same articulation, only with a few added issues. Now, in case you have not seen that video, I'll go ahead and tackle it here. You still have a head joint here that allows the head to rotate 360 degrees on the base of the neck, but if you, of course, look a little closer, you'll notice that it's got a hinge joint right there in the middle that allows the head to fully look up as well as almost crunch all the way into himself to the point where he even kind of breaks away a little bit here on the base of his neck that connects to his head. So you can see how flexible that head joint really is. Then we get to the shoulders where things still become also a little bit flexible. You got that dual joint that allows the arm to fully rotate 360 degrees, and it's a slightly bit ratchet. It's not as clicky as I would want it to be, but slight ratchetedness going on right there on the shoulder joint for the vertical movement as well as flexibility inwards and outwards. Now that is fully ratcheted, as you can kind of see it popping in and outwards right there as far as the arm extension. But then furthermore, one of my standout features of the new Marvel Legends, or at least some of these Marvel Legends featuring this kind of body type, is the added shoulder joint that allows flexing of the arm fully backwards, as you see right there, and fully forwards. Of course, like I mentioned already a couple of times, the Cyborg Spidey is a bit more flexible than Negative Zone Spidey or even 2099 Spidey here, but it does allow movement forwards and backwards, as you see right there, for much better flexing. Then, of course, we do have a bicep swivel right about right there that allows full 360 degrees, as well as two joints at the elbow that do fully bend inwards, as you can see right about right there. And then the wrist joints on not just these hands, but also hands that will tackle during accessories can fully rotate 360 degrees, as well as being able to pivot inwards and rather generously outwards due to a hinge joint right there at the base of the wrist. Once we get to torso, since it is in fact a duplicate of that Negative Zone Spidey, it's also going to have the same problem right there on the abs where, yeah, you do have that hinge joint for the ab crunch, except said ab crunch is not as fully realized as I would want it to be. Crunches not too badly inwards, but as far as flexing upwards or outwards, there's really not much really found there. Now, you do have that waist cut that allows full 360 degree movement, but like I've mentioned before, due to the way that this whole abdominal area is designed, having him pose with the waist pretty much turned at a 45 degree angle is going to look awkward. It's going to look even more awkward when being able to have 2099 Spidey look in a certain direction while at the same time trying to keep his feet firmly on the ground is probably going to be the only way to do so with that waist joint, because once we get to the top of the legs is where we get our definitive problem as to why this figure is so shocking frustrating, is because these top leg joints do flex forwards about that far, actually rather really far, if you can see it right there, and only about that much back due to the way that the ass is sculpted right there, and some decent extension to the sides. However, they do stop right about right there due to the way that these shells right here are designed and stopping the movement of the joint all the way across. So you think to yourself, okay, if they can only extend about that far, but you want to be able to like have the feet as well as the orientation of the legs firmly planted on the ground while at the same time being able to extend a little bit like this, or if you wanted to kind of turn like that, or just, you know, play around and be much more malleable with the figure, you would then turn your attention to these thigh cuts right here to allow for that to happen, especially when we tackle the way that these feet could be angled in adjacent directions, like towards the outsides at a 45 degree angle, but not a full 90, right? Well, I don't know what is going on. This is where we get into some weird ass territory, because These joints right here, these thigh joints, they don't move. They do not move. They are there, but they are stuck. Now, David, why don't you try doing the hair dryer? Why don't you try putting it in boiling water? Well, here's the issue. I've already done that with the first figure. This is the second one of Spidey 2099 I had to order, and I had to return the other one and get my money back so I can then buy this guy. Because I tried that before with a previous figure that had the same problem. These thigh joints right here did not move. So now getting a second figure that didn't have the thigh joints or the thigh cuts right here to be able to swivel all the way across on its axis means that this is probably a much wider spread issue. If you guys have this figure, let me know in the comment section to tell me if I'm right or wrong. But this thing did not move on that first figure. Tried to give it the hair dryer, blow on it with the hair dryer or do some hot water. And when I tried it, this one did loosen up. This one broke the shells that are right here that are supposed to hold this piece together. This part right here broke. It just completely cracked and it was just loose on its joint, and now this leg was joint on that other version. It was pretty much broken. And then this one was barely moving, but not as much as I would want it to be. And I'm like, this is jacked up. And I thought, okay, it's one figure. It's still within its return policy. Let me return it, exchange it for a brand new one. And now I have a second one that has the exact same issue. And I'm not even going to try to give it the hot air thing or whatever. Because now knowing that a second figure has the exact same problem from a different manufacturer, shipped from, overseen by Amazon, but from a different company, a different seller, and I'm still having the same issue, yeah, something is up. So therefore, I would say that this, combined with a couple of other little qualms that I've already had about, like I said, the lankiness of the abdomen and things carried on over from negatives on Spidey, make this for a disappointing figure. So as we kind of press on here, these thigh cuts do not move whatsoever, and now seeing it being prevalent in much other stock of this figure makes me think that no, anywhere that I look, I'm gonna come across the same issue, and therefore 2099 is almost by default here a bit of a letdown. Once we get to the knees, it is more traditional, and thankfully they do fully bend at the two joints that you are given for said knees, as you see right there. But then once we get to the feet, like I mentioned with Cyborg Spidey, considering that Cyborg Spidey came with the calf cuts right here, or the shin cuts right here that allow movement of the lower leg so that you can then flex and turn the ankle in the way that you desire, I was thinking to myself, okay, that could allow for the ankles to turn in that direction, just like it did with Negative Zone Spidey. Well, because I was relying on the thigh cuts, that means that there's no shin cuts right here to allow rotation, and then the feet as well on this one are also kind of stuck. So the left one can pivot downwards and upwards about that far, and of course in doing so you can rotate it. When it's neutral and completely flat, the ankle does not rotate, but when you flex it down, then it rotates. Similar to Negative Zone Spidey and that first version of 2099. Okay, so because it's got the duck feet, as I like to call them, it's going to have that same issue. Of course, with Negative Zone Spidey, I was able to bypass this with the shin cut. Being that there's no cuts that I can rely on, that's the only real method. And when we get to the right ankle, it doesn't pivot. Yeah, it slightly pivots down. Actually, I don't think it even pivots down. I thought maybe I'm having a Mandela effect. But yeah, look, it's stuck. And I don't want to press it any further because I can sincerely feel the joint bending. Like, this is completely stuck. I don't know if there's like any adhesive in there. I don't know what it is, but now this one is stuck. It could rotate, but when I try pressing to rotate it 360, it doesn't really do an even 360. It slants. So it's almost like something is stuck in the right joint here. And again, this is already my second figure. So the fact that I'm coming across all these problems right here made me go, you know what? I think 2099 Spidey is beyond saving here, unfortunately, because that pretty much does it for the articulation, but it looks like by default, he's going to be pretty much stuck in a pose similar or akin to something like this, because getting him to be in any other way is damn near impossible due to all those problems. Now, regardless of how his legs turn out to be when you're trying to pose them, at least they kind of alleviated the stress that could pose by throwing in a couple of hand accessories or a few hand pairs. Aside from the clawed hands that he comes with by default, he also comes with 2 fisted hands, right about right there, which of course are kind of illogical considering that he's got claws. So where do those claws go exactly? Maybe he could retract them. But we can kind of see the retracted claws with these wall crawling hands. As you see right there, these open wall crawling hands. And of course, swapping the hands in and out are fairly simple. All you have to do is really give them a tug and then fit the other joint right in. And then of course, the articulation is all the same. However, I don't even feel compelled to do that here in the review. Maybe I'll do it during B-roll, but as I kind of just already demonstrated there, 2099 Spidey is a bit of a disappointment. Unfortunately, I don't know if I'm gonna go ahead and try a third attempt of trying to return this one and try to get it again, because by the second point, if you can't get it right with this articulation and these little quality control issues, then I've already kind of moved on and I'm ready to look forward to the next Marvel Legends, whether it be Ben Reilly Spidey or the symbiote black suited Spidey, which I'm really looking forward to getting into my collection. I was already having the distinctive process of trying to warm up to 2099 Spider-Man as a character. It's probably going to be a whole nother journey to get a much more definitive 2099 Spidey action figure. Here's to hoping that maybe Marvel Legends will do something in the future that doesn't, require this body type once more to be recycled, because I think that's probably right now the best decision and course to do in order to give this guy the proper revamp that he deserves, especially since the character might become popular here with the new Into the Spider-Verse, or I should say Across the Spider-Verse movie. So with that in mind, let me know in the comments, guys, do you guys like 29 Spidey as a character? And if you guys happen to own any of his action figures, let me know in the comments section if there's a version of the character, or at least a version of the figure that you guys recommend I pick up instead, or if you do have the retro line Marvel Legends like you saw right here in this review, let me know in the comment section if you guys are also having problems with its articulation. And since you're down there, if you guys found this video to be useful in a purchasing decision, be sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, or check out this other Marvel Legends review showing up on screen right now. As always, guys, take care and stay humble.